I'll give a little bit of background here about commercial sector and some of the barriers and what's working, so that people can so we can initiate some chatting. So one, let's see, come on, sometimes it does not, there we go. Talk a little about this issue of understanding the sector, what are some, and the barriers, what are some options, and so on. So, you know, why do we even bother considering the commercial sector? Well, it's 40 to 60% of the waste stream, and if you're going to try to reach goals, how are you going to get there? A big bang with fewer actors. One of the big things that's, you know, kind of different is that the costs are borne elsewhere. Almost every strategy that's done in the commercial sector, the costs are borne by that business, and that's essentially low cost to the city. Most of the strategies are policy changes or requirements or something like that that put a burden on actors in the area, that in that sector, and they're meant to bear that cost. Why it's few key streams, so that's pretty straightforward. Has job creation impacts, 10 jobs, 4 jobs, 1 job. If you're talking about tons done in 10,000 tons in recycling, composting, or trash, greenhouse gas benefits. And it's if you've done, if you've done a fairly robust bit of work in your residential sector, you may be kind of stagnated, because frankly, multifamilies are pretty hard not to crack, and it may be actually the commercial is an easier one to go after. Why do we not go after it, and why are there barriers? Well, very concerned that the business sectors are all heterogeneous, and oh my gosh, how are we going to get a handle on this kind of business and that kind of business and so on? We may have limited authorities in the sector. In the res sector, there may be fairly clear authority for a community on what they can do, but in the commercial sector, it hasn't really been explored as much. People are a little hesitant about what they can actually do, and yet not interfere. They seem to interfere in the marketplace in a way that's not allowed. They don't know the sectors. It's, maybe requires some expertise. And how do we affect the actual, decision makers? And how do we get the decision maker attention? Because folks may not be local decision makers. And there are also a bunch of different actors, and we care about each of these actors, but maybe reaching each one of them may be difficult. Builders, developers, commercial, multifamily managers, haulers, businesses that work in the recycling field, and various, there are a lot of different actors in this, and it's a lot simpler in the res sector. Well, it is useful to have data so that you can understand this sector, but this is not a mystery. There are 3 to 4 main materials, or 4 to 5 main materials. It's really not mysterious, and you can look at existing data from other communities. But what's really valuable is take out the census data, look at what your employment is in different sectors, and that's going to give you a pretty darn good idea of what business sectors are major. Or look at what you've got from the business development group, or look at talk with the Chamber of Commerce. So it really doesn't have to be mysterious about what sectors you're dealing with. And you can get, if you want more information beyond census or that kind of talking with folks who know, you can do a business survey, and it's really cheap to do a business survey these days. If at least statewide, it might be difficult in a city. It's easy to do citywide if you're willing to use city information for it. You can also buy a sample if you're in a larger community. And SurveyMonkey folks can actually get you purchased responses for surveys. You can also drive by businesses and see what who has recycling carts out and who doesn't. What kind of stuff is in there. And you can also create some proxy waste comps based on your local employment. And I'm happy to talk with that, with that at a later, if you have some questions or something. There are a few key streams, and they're easily matched types: cardboard, paper, bottles and cans, food waste, and C&D. There's not going to be much different from that. And the other thing is that, yes, you may have a million different business types, but you have some core business activities or things that are happening, or like you're going to have offices, and what kind of what of those materials are generated in offices. You're going to have schools, and you have an idea of what's, if schools are considered part of the sort of non-res sector. You have some retail, and it's pretty clear which things are there.
You know you're going to have hotels and restaurants, and which sectors are which materials are going to come there. It's not mysterious, and most places start with sort of offices and that sort of thing, and then move based on types and sizes. Most of the actual barriers, I talked a little bit about some of the barriers before. Most of the actual barriers have a solution. Number one is city barriers, and if there's political will, you can solve the city barriers. And it's just, there's not much more to say than that. That's, if there's no political will, then it's going to be disruptive to the sector. Anything you do is going to be a bit disruptive to the sector because that's what you're trying to do. If those barriers need some political will. Barriers like space or screening. Oh goodness, we can't fit recycling bins in because there's just too, we're required to screen them, and we can't fit another bin in, or we can't fit a bin in the basement or whatever. For the screening issue, there's nothing wrong with providing recycling service to the commercial sector, especially the small commercial sector, in 90-gallon containers. And I guarantee you, the vast majority of screened areas can fit a couple of 90-gallon containers. It's not a barrier. It's not I'm McDonald's, every parking spot there is worth $1 billion, and you can't take away my parking space. So it does not have to be like that. For management disinterest, or the fact that decision making isn't local, you're going to have resistance. People are going to say, you're not going to get much uptake in programs. The only way you're going to get uptake, the only way past those barriers, is to have something like universal recycling ordinance and requirements. It's not a voluntary, let's all get together and we all think recycling is good and let's feel good about it. The sector is busy. The sector has issues. The sector has a lot of other interests that are not trash. Their trash interest is, please, I will pay a bill, handle it, and not, unless you're a green business. I'm not talking to the green businesses. The green businesses are a little bit different, but for the vast majority of business, this is not core to my business. Please let me, times are hard enough. Let me just deal with that. But I'll say that the one overarching thing that is absolutely a problem in this sector is cost. Cost is not a solvable issue through most of the programs we might want. It is going to cost businesses more to do recycling plus trash than trash only under the current model. So any recycling that you encourage is going to cost them more. And because they're not going to be able to reduce trash enough to get rid of the fact that it costs to get a truck there to collect trash and it costs to get a truck there for recycling. I hate to tell, we can talk all the happy stuff we want to talk about, if they reduce enough or whatever. The vast majority of the cost is getting the truck there and getting service. It will be more expensive. How do we get past that? There are several key options for recycling programs, and I'm going to go from basic to what works well. Basic is requiring space for recycling containers in the building code, in the building permits, or in the regs. Maybe you can offer some grant programs to help them purchase containers, that sort of stuff, or provide some technical assistance for them about, walkthroughs of how their business could recycle better. You can have some recognition programs for green businesses that do XYZ checklists of not using toxic material stuff and doing recycling and having it available for their customers and for their employees. That's all fine and good, and people do, the surveys show people do want to shop at green labeled businesses. One of the things that's surprising is that businesses often don't know a lot about recycling, and I have done surveys in businesses where they had no idea that the trash hauler could also provide recycling. And stuff like that that's really basic, and it may be worth giving them some information about that, maybe working with the Chamber of Commerce Lunch and Learns or stuff like that. But you also might require that invoices or bills actually provide information that lets the commercial customers know what is being paid for. An invoice that says service, or an invoice that says AB 6599.6 service, does not provide the customer any information about what service they're getting, or give them the necessary, like what size, what frequency, inform them in a way that recycling may be cheaper per ton or something like that.
but if you can get them to put the information on the bills, then they also can do some bidding, ask for bids from other companies, maybe get a lower price, and maybe get right-sized at the same time. So there's a whole thing with invoices, and people are very ignorant because they're not provided information for a reason. It doesn't help the haulers to provide the information on the service. It just helps people bid. So that's an issue. If you can, put surcharges on other streams at your level. So put surcharges on trash and maybe forgive sales tax on organics and recycling or something like that. If you can do that sort of thing, you can help ratchet up the incentives a bit. But the ones that really work are an ABC law, that is requiring businesses with liquor license must recycle all their beverage containers, all beverage containers, all bottles and cans, whichever way you want to put it, or they risk non-renewal of their liquor license. It piggybacks on existing enforcement. It's targeted at the people who create those materials. It's not all of them, but it's a lot of them. It's very successful in places and the state of North Carolina is actually the one that developed that, at least from what I've been able to tell. Who would expect it to be Carolina and not California? It's not something crazy coming out of California. It's something that works in places other than California. The other key set of options is universal recycling ordinance. That can be at the
OK level of requiring that businesses be offered recycling or that be available to them. Better is to say, and people have to pay for a minimum amount of recycling, and that it's phrased as it's required, and yet the key is that they have to pay for some. It's better with specifics. Say if you generate more than 4 cubic yards, or it has to be at least sized to 50% of the trash can that you've got, or it has to at least include these materials. That's a better law. And as part of that, you should also require that the service be convenient, that there be signage for the employees, that potentially there be training, and maybe some are requiring business plans for recycling. I don't know. That's, where do you have them sent? Who's really going to look at them? Is that meaningful? So, but it does require them to think about it. The best option, though, hands down, and it's in some places, it's in, maybe a couple dozen places, but it's really the best option because it gets rid of the cost problem, is to go that extra step, not just say recycling is required, but recycling is required and the cost of it has to be embedded in the trash rate. That makes it parallel to the recycling in the residential sector and says that there is no extra cost for recycling then because it's embedded in the trash bill. And that law, that ordinance would then say that's the sizing has to be a minimum of say 50% of the trash contained, the trash size, total volume, or 100%. If you're trying to get to a goal of, let's say, 50% recycling, well, if you just require a 50% size, you're only going to get to 25% recycling. It has to be equal to the trash bin in order to sort of even have the space for 50% recycling in the commercial sector. And if you're trying to get beyond 50%, it's going to require bigger recycling containers than trash containers. It can be phased in, starting with maybe the biggest businesses and going down to the smaller businesses, or phase it in by employee size or all kinds of different things. It makes it parallel to recycling. It makes it no extra cost for recycling. Food requirements for targeted sectors is another phase that you can do. And the way that they make things work in some other states is they make bans, and that bans or mandates like UROs are the only real way to get change in this sector. If it was cheaper, if it was easier, it would be happening already. It's the basics. The last thing to think about in this sector is construction and demolition. Requiring a container if they provided service for trash, or requiring a recycling container is a good first step. The best system that's out there is a permit deposit system. That is when they go for a permit to either do construction or demolition, they're required to leave a financial amount of money that's calculated based on the size of the job they're going to be doing. And they can claim it back if they bring back receipts and documentation that material was recycled. Then they can get that financial deposit back, and it is a strong motivator to get them to actually make that happen. Very successful in many different places across the country. High performers, pay as you throw, encourage bidding, bans, mandates, ABC law, surcharges, differential taxes, space for recycling, and C&D options. They sort of phase through things over time. you want to understand the sector, but don't get paralyzed. It is not a mystery. I think there are phased options. You can just do a little bit, but if you want real progress, then you need to start going to a universal recycling ordinance and potentially pay as you throw. It is worth it. There's a large percentage of material that's here, 40 to 60%, big tons per participant, and it's the only way to reach your goals. There's some supporting tools. We have models, and we have white papers on different programs, and we have proxy waste comp generators and so on. Bottom line is it's a natural evolution into your next step. And thanks. So we're meant to have a discussion, right? So questions?
I have something I wanted to add into that, just because I'm a loudmouth. But you were talking about some mandates and those kind of things, and I think those are polarizing. It's just my opinion. But to give you an example in the city of Norman, and this is certainly based on the volatility of the commodity market. But if the current blended market price were to remain consistent now conservatively in our municipality of about 150,000 some odd people, in our simple commercial, just cardboard recycling, between diversion and collection fees, we can generate about $1.3 million in revenue with an annual operating cost of about $650,000. So we're good without a mandate. Now, we're not recycling everything. We're just recycling cardboard, but wow. And now I'm throwing in the commodities at my drop centers too. But that's a great place to start, I think. And without a mandate, without anything else. And you said it earlier, you have the infrastructure to do it. You've already got the trash trucks. All you have to do is carve a route out, offer that service, and let that business reduce their cost of trash being collected by adding a cardboard container. And in this commodity market, with the price of cardboard the way it is, you are in business and you're gonna make some money.
So how did you do that? How you required them to put a bin next to it for cardboard? Is that what you said you did, or how did you get people to do it?
No mandates. You just if you're paying $500 a month for 4 times a week trash service, and you put a cardboard out there and reduce that by 25% and charge a smaller collection fee, they're saving money at the place of business, and you're making money off that commodity. So you're in business. You're able to go out there at the same cost of operating and then sell a commodity on top of it. Mm-hmm. So I think with the current trends in the commodity market, if they were to remain consistent, and we do a good job of keeping the demand up and making sure the end product there, those kind of things, I think right now is the perfect time to get into commercial recycling. I think there are some challenges, logistical challenges, driving trucks and those kind of things as always, but this is the time you could do it. And municipality just needs to break even.
So are you with the municipality in Norman, or are you with the hauler? I apologize, I don't know.
We have a franchise. It's a franchise in Norman. So I'm with the city of Norman. We're an enterprise fund with the city of Norman. We do all commercial and residential trash collection, and we do commercial recycling and drop centers. Yep. So we're able to, with this commodity market. Now, I couldn't say this, 8, 10 months ago. I was
exactly
the exact opposite, the antithesis of all of that. But currently, this is a great time to start.
Yeah, and you're a city, so you can take a few ups and downs. Even if it gets a little bit weak, you can extend maybe a longer than a hauler might. So yeah, that's a great situation to be in. Maybe
I don't have that corporate fee, and I don't have that demand for a 37% earning before interest, taxes, and depreciation. I can break even on the deal, provide that service, and I'm getting that diversion savings of 20 some odd dollars per ton. Yep. On top of the revenue for just collecting the box. The customer saves money, and we are able to operate at a lower cost. So the net on that thing helps us. It puts money in our reserves.
A great example. Other people doing anything commercial that they want to share? Go, just jump right in, Michael.
Okay, my question wasn't about necessarily just commercial in general, but I loved your comments about construction and demolition debris. I really do agree with you that C&D is the frontier. If we're trying to justify our programs with tonnage, it's overwhelming amount of tons. Oklahoma has very low landfill rates, and the construction and demolition haulers generally don't fall within the same rules even as trash haulers here often. So it's difficult. I really like the permit process. I know there's been a few examples of this I've seen that have been really great. You mentioned there's lots of examples. Are there any examples of communities or states that have C&D recycle permit processes anywhere around here with low landfill rates?
That I don't know, but I'm happy to look in our database and find out. So
Okay.
I will look for examples.
We've tried to work with the hauling wrecking companies here, and amazingly that they're under a different licensing process. So I haul trash, I get this permit. I haul construction debris, I get a whole separate, much easier permit to get and deal with. So it just seems like we treat them so separately
Yeah.
that the trash people have no chance to really even begin that conversation because they're not even the same permit people.
Yeah, you have to intervene at systems that are already on their stops. I think, they're on their required, I have to see this permit guy. I think that was the real game changer when they integrated that step people weren't missed anymore.
But I know some cities have had great success that a guy's going to tear down this business. He puts up the $800 deposit based on how many cubic yards of debris they estimate would be from there. And then he goes back and gets his $800 back when he shows that he did the right thing with it. So it's not a big process. It feels like government overreach in some point, but on the other hand, it's no money out. They just have to prove that they did the right thing by their paperwork, not by some inspector. So
Exactly.
I mean, San Jose they had so much success from this. I've seen other cities. I wish we could do that here. Thanks.
And San Jose designed it really well too. They said, you know what, 25% of the admin hassles would be from, these, or excuse me, 25% of the folks only generate 10% of the waste. So we're going to exempt, buildings smaller than X. And then, they're out 25% of the hassle, but still getting 90% of the tons. So things like that make a program even more workable are smart. And, I think we're after the big chunks first,
Good. Thanks.
I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule. So that last 20% is just so expensive. So yeah.
Thanks.
No,
Well,
thank you.
What about the leads programs? I think our engineers are not, if there's an engineer on here, I think there might be, I believe our engineers require on their construction programs that they participate in that leads program, which is the recycling of those C&D things.
Are there some leads folks online or folks who deal with that? Otherwise, yeah, that's a good motivator, I think, for those who are already interested. You definitely get some incentives to recycle, so and to make smart decisions in the construction as well. I see we're closing in 106 seconds, so 106 seconds to ask another question or tell me about another great case study there. Well, I think one of the issues is training and the fact that people don't stick around a long time. And I think people have found that providing something on, a simple little video on the website that folks can view that's mostly picture oriented, because a lot of areas of the country have real language issues for some of the people who have to worry about what's going to be done to manage the recyclables on site. So I think they find that sort of thing works especially well, that brochures and all that are a little tougher. But if people can get to they're important, but little videos that turnover staff type get to look at, that works pretty well.
Lisa, if I can ask real quick, just a quick commercial for your company. I know you do a lot of rate studies for municipalities and government agencies. to figure out the right rate to charge for recycling or electricity and stuff. Any good examples of places around here you've worked?
Let's see. It's a great question. I mean, I'm based in Colorado, which is not terribly far away, and has the similar issue of very low landfill fees. So I've worked all over that state and done their state plans. I've done work in a little bit of work in Kansas, a little bit of work in some work in Texas. Yeah, a couple of communities in Texas. So, but not in Oklahoma. I'm
It's
sorry
mostly
to
the
say.
rate studies. It's mostly trying to figure out the right rate for these things.